I'm Clay Worley, and I am currently Executive Vice President and Chief Human Resources Officer for the Bowman Consulting Group. I've been in human resources for a long career of well over 30 years now. I'm really excited about this new opportunity. I'm very passionate about business as a whole, and I think human capital plays an integral part, as we have all seen, especially today with the crazy labor market and the various things that are going on. So really excited to be with a new company and finding new ways to contribute to growth and really still continue to grow and develop myself. During the whole COVID pandemic, we have really had to rethink a lot of things: our home life, our school life, our social lives. Certainly in being in HR, we've had to be at the forefront of that rethinking process. I talk a lot about, I'm really pleased that even though we had to go through this pandemic, we were all, human resource professionals as well as companies, were really forced to rehumanize our workforce, to understand that different people are indeed different. They have different needs, different situations. They come from different backgrounds. And there's even a greater opportunity now, more so than ever, I believe, to value that. And with the pandemic, we had to quickly pivot. We found out how quickly we as a company and we as individuals could pivot, how we could adapt. And adaptability is certainly a key survival strength. We've had to learn how to think differently about the needs of people because they are indeed different. And I think almost every single company that I know has really rethought the whole concept of working in an office every single day of your life. So really interesting. And I don't think we're done yet. I think we're going to continue to evolve, and we have a chance to drive some new perspectives and some new experiences within our workplace. Some of the new conversations that our experiences are driving is really, how do we look at our workforce, but how do we measure their success? How do we equip them? How do we look at their productivity? How do we know that this star performer who was sitting 3 offices down the hall from me prior, who's now living, in a yurt in Colorado, is still producing at the level and is still engaged with the right people that they need to in order to drive innovation and collaboration? And how do I ensure that they're really in a place that they're taking care of themselves? One of the conversations that I have a lot with people is that working from home and working remotely or in a hybrid situation, it's been great. But what people find is that they actually are working more hours, and more hours is not always the best measure of productivity. So I think the conversations that we're seeing now is with managers about how do we think differently about productivity? How do we support it? How do we measure it? What are our goals there? I think that's another interesting conversation that has come from, maybe not come because of the pandemic, because I think we were having it before, but there's a very different conversation these days about generational differences in the workplace. I think there are still a lot of assumptions being made about, what does Gen X want? What does Gen Z want? What do the millennials, what do the baby boomers want? I think that we are still dealing with an infrastructure and, a business model that is largely what we have always done, and it was built by typically the older white males. And so we sometimes, you don't want to overgeneralize, but we sometimes see that generation saying, why aren't people more in the office? But interestingly enough, I'm seeing that really across all generations, people are looking for flexibility, and they're looking for managers that are going to treat them with respect and understand their capability. These are grown adults that we're talking about, whether they're young adults or old adults, and they enjoy the flexibility. I find, rather than having a discussion about, gosh, how do we agonize about bringing people back to the office, and are we going to require it 5 days a week or 3 days a week? Rather than having those conversations, I think it's much more beneficial for us to have the conversation about what works for you. And it may be because there's a generational difference, but it also could be, a societal difference, socioeconomic, family difference. So I think sometimes we over characterize things as, well, we must do this for this generation. I think we have to look at our structure and our foundation, and we have to ensure flexibility, and we have to understand that there are different needs. I've had the question a lot about what was different, making a transition during this time. And, it's a bit of a difficult question to answer. Each transition, regardless, is going to be different. But again, I think we have a tendency to think, oh, things are so different because we're in a pandemic or because this has changed. It's incredibly important for us as business people, and certainly as human capital professionals, that we have that flexibility to be able to scan the environment, see what's going on, to react to that, not overreact, and not necessarily say, oh, we have to throw the whole game book out the window, but we need to understand the nuances and the difference. So for me, I have to say there wasn't a huge difference making a transition. It was part of a decision-making process now that it wasn't before, in terms of what is your approach to work and your philosophy. How flexible are you? Are you fully hybrid, or fully remote, or completely back at the office? There are some companies that are out there that are absolutely fully remote, and we're still finding candidates out there that are absolutely, if you can't deal with fully remote, I'm not interested in talking with you. My personal opinion is, I think those people are gonna find the right opportunities a lot of times, but I think they're also going to miss out on some opportunities due to that inflexibility. So for me, the transition was not unduly influenced by our pandemic. And I think we need to pay attention more to what's going on in the business world and in the labor market than anything else. As I look at the labor market, I don't necessarily want to give away all my secrets, but I do see a highly volatile, quickly changing labor market. I see a lot of craziness, but I also see a lot of companies who are caught up in that craziness. And again, I think an important attribute for any business person, any human capital person, is you have to be able to keep your head about you in the chaos. So yes, it's a very challenging labor market. So how are we thinking differently? How are we can't just continue to pay everybody an extra $10,000, $20,000 because they went down the street. That will peter out eventually, just from economic issues. So, are we looking at things like our employee value proposition? Do we have the kind of cultural values that, one, we do something with, other than write them on a poster that sits on the wall? Do we live them? And are they really impacting our business? And that was one of the really exciting things about Bowman, is they so had their act together in terms of really strong cultural values that literally are lived every day by our employees. And, as a result, our turnover is incredibly low. Yes, we have challenges. We're attracting new talent, but again, what we have to do is stop doing what we've always done, and we have to adapt. As I look at companies and their cultural values, I think the way you look for ways to see if they're really living it is, obviously, you're going to look at their business results, because business results are definitely impacted by cultural values. Cultural values define how it is that you do business. So it defines your processes. One of our cultural values here at Bowman, that, interestingly enough, there are a lot of people who have really strong favorable reactions, and there are a few people that have, I'm not so sure about that one, but it's a value of results over process. And that goes hand in hand with our value of entrepreneurial freedom. So we're a growing company. We've just gone public in the past year. We've more than doubled in size in a year's time, and have additional really aggressive, strong strategic growth plans. And we've got to make sure that the results are there. But I see people exercising that, and it really manifests itself in the collaboration and the can-do attitude. I have yet to hear at this company, that's not my job, or no, we can't do that because we've always done it this way. We're very much moving away from the way we used to do things because we're growing. And that is very much a good sign of a learning environment and an environment that's not too afraid of change. As I look at the remainder of this year, which always amazes me how quickly it's going, and it'll be over before you know it. I personally am very excited about obviously my new opportunity here at Bowman. Again, great company, fantastic people, some really great opportunities to make a true difference in our business as we scale and grow. So, we're looking at things like new ways to take care of our employees, new ways to engage our employees. We have a truly outstanding learning and development leader, a chief learning officer that really drives some wonderful, wonderful leadership and management training. So I'm very excited about what we have to do in terms of continuing to mature our service. We are looking at employee experience, we're looking at employee value proposition, and we are looking to drive efficiency. So those are very exciting things. I think we've got a lot of low-hanging fruit, but we have a good start for a longer-term strategic roadmap. And that's often the biggest challenge for us in HR. We live in a day-to-day firefighting environment, and we always will have that, and we need to be really good at that, but we have got to be able to escape that vicious cycle of busyness and have a strategic eye on our business and on our markets and drive what we want to do. So I'm very excited about the future. I continue to share with people the incredible value that comes from being part of the HR Alliance DC organization. I have been a part of the organization for many years, been on the board for a number of those years, have served on various committees. And for me, I'm a relationship person. So the most incredible value that I've gotten from this organization is the incredible relationships that I've built. Relationships with people that I can learn from, that I can trust, that I can bounce ideas off of, that I can be a sounding board to, as well as have a sounding board. That and just the incredible talent that is represented through HR Alliance, both with our members and our vendor sponsors. Some of the best business successes that I've had have come through some of the relationships that I've had with our vendor partners who have wonderful solutions. And let's face it, we in HR are bombarded constantly all day long with people who are making sales calls. And I respect those people, and I respect that their jobs. I don't know that they can always respect the fact that I don't have time to take sales calls every 5 minutes of my day. So those relationships are very important. So that and the content of our programs, of course, I'm not the least bit biased, but we can't be touched. So I hope that people will see this and will say, I want to figure out if what he's saying is really right, and you'll give us a chance. So come visit us at HR Alliance.